Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. There is a plan for you. Easily, the most interesting disciple that Jesus had was Simon Peter. He popped up all over in Jesus' ministry, but there is something about Peter that you cannot deny. Jesus had plans for him from the very beginning. In fact, Jesus has a plan for each of us. When many of us think about a plan for our lives, we revert to a famous verse. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. That sounds good, doesn't it? But don't forget that when God's people heard that famous statement, things were not all good at that moment. They were in Babylon, exiled there for 70 years because they had sinned against God. The point is, no matter what is going on in your life, please know that God has plans for you. You and I need to step into that plan. This is easily the first time that we learn about Peter. One of 12 disciples, one of the first two, but we learn that there was a plan for Peter, this fisherman from Galilee. In Matthew 4, we read how God called his first two recruits. There were Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea. Out of nowhere, Jesus comes up to these two guys and said, "Come, follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. Matthew 4:19-20. But there is an interesting twist to that first encounter, and we read it in Luke 5. Jesus was teaching on the shores of the Sea of Galilee one day, and the crowd was pretty big, so he borrowed a boat belonging to Simon and pushed out a little into the water. After the teaching, Jesus said to Peter, "Put out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." They caught so much fish that they had to call for help because the nets were breaking. That floored Peter. And we heard him saying to Jesus, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." That was a clear message to Jesus to leave me alone. You are scaring me, Jesus. What you did just now, it blows my mind. Leave me alone. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." Luke 5 verses 1-11. Do you understand that story? Peter did not leave home that morning expecting to change his profession. Jesus found Peter gainfully employed. He was not applying for a new job, but here comes Jesus right where Peter was doing life with his brother and called him out for purpose. I'm telling you, pay attention to Peter's story. Jesus could possibly turn up today with an assignment for you. We're not going to exhaust all the details of Simon's story that we find in the four Gospels, but I want to point out that it didn't take long for this colorful character to emerge. And here's what I find interesting. Peter became one of Jesus's inner circle. I wonder if he knew what was going to happen, or he was just a nice guy. On several occasions, we read of Peter, James, and John. But keep an eye on Peter. There was a time when Jesus walked on water. Actually, the 12 disciples were in a boat one night. The winds were choppy, and out of nowhere comes someone walking on the sea. 12 grown men on a boat seeing a phenomenon of someone walking on the water in the dark of the night, and they concluded that it was a ghost. Except this quote-unquote ghost spoke. "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." Are you serious, Peter? Jesus is walking on water, my friend, and you seriously want to do that too? But Jesus took him up on his request and told him to come. And Peter had the rare distinction of being the only brave or crazy disciple to ever walk on water. Pay attention to that incident that is recorded in Matthew 14:22 to 33. As time rolls on, Peter had several other standout stories. Like the time when Jesus asked him, "Who do you say I am?" Peter blurted out, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Peter never failed, does he? But listen to this man who was not afraid to say what comes to mind, who was not afraid to ask Jesus to do the unusual for him. "Blessed are you, Simon, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven." Matthew 16, verses 16 and 17. Then on the night before the crucifixion, Jesus was telling them what was about to happen, and Peter jumped in and said, "I won't let them do that to you, Jesus." Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." Matthew 26:31 to 35. But he did. That very night, Peter denied Jesus once, not twice, 3 times. And even several days after Jesus rose from the dead, we see Peter seeming to walk away from all this life with Jesus. One day he said, "I'm going out to fish." He had not fished in over 3 years, but in his despondency, he chose to return to an old life. But Jesus had a plan for him. Later in the morning, Peter had an encounter with Jesus like no other. Jesus challenged him to admit his love for him, Jesus. 3 times Jesus asked him, "Simon, do you love me?" And each time Jesus said, "Feed my lambs, feed my sheep, feed my sheep." But this was a life-changing conversation for Peter. It was time to confront him with the plans that Jesus had for him all along, through all the experiences of being with Jesus for over 3 years. Jesus had a big plan for this Galilean fisherman. And on this occasion, Jesus revisited the plan. But this time, things were about to change. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." You find that account in John 21, verses 15 through 19. The first time Jesus said, "Follow me," to Peter, "and I will make you to be a fisher of men." More than 3 years later, Jesus spoke to him again and gave him his specific assignment. But this time, my friend, Peter got it. This time, Peter knew that Jesus was not picking on him because he was a crazy man. Jesus was revealing his plan for his disciple, Peter. We will continue to review the Peter story the next time we meet, but I leave with you this question. Do you know the plans that Jesus has for you? Yes, I know that you know Jeremiah 29 and verse 11, but I am speaking specifically. Do you know what God wants you to do? If you do, are you willing and ready to step into that plan? Or will you resist, like so many of us?